Good day, everyone, and a really warm welcome to the Women in Mining Africa Mining Summit panel. And today with us is Naseem, Lahri, Naadiya Moosajee, Zenzi, Awases, Tendani, Lukhaimane. I'm Farana Boodhram, your chair for the panel. I am the CEO and owner of Avita Mining, a company that specializes in underground roof support and ventilation for the last 20 years. I'm also the owner of a patent of an overall for women underground, which is compliant to policy endorsed by the DMR and the Mine Health and Safety Council. It is a one-piece overall that separates into a two-piece, padded in all the relevant places to protect a woman, ensuring that she maintains her dignity when using ablution facilities. And like I said, I'll be the chair. But to get on with it, I'm going to have each of our panelists introduce themselves. Naseem, if you can go ahead and give us a little bit of a background on your experience related to the topic and where you come from.
My name is Naseem Lahri, and I'm the Managing Director of Lucara, Botswana. I'm from the mining industry specifically. I've been sort of grown up in the mining industry for about 17 years, in excess of 17 years, and eventually got promoted to the first Managing Director to run a diamond mining organization in Botswana, and the first Botswana woman to run a diamond mining operation. And this was my stint at Lucara, Botswana. So I transitioned from a CFO to the Managing Director of Lucara, Botswana. So bottom line is that's my input to this panel here, but also just to talk about what gender diversity in the mining sector means for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Naseem. Tendani, if you could please introduce yourself to us and tell us a little bit about your experience.
Thanks, Farana. I'm Tendani Lukhaimane. I am a Principal Innovation and Improvements by profession, currently working for South 32. I'm also a regional lead for our Women in Mining South Africa, looking after the Mpumalanga region. I studied geology, so by profession, I'm a geologist. I started my career in an underground mine. I currently work in the coal sector, and I'm really passionate about the development of women in the mining industry. And as a part of Women in Mining South Africa, that will be my contribution to this panel today.
Thank you very much, Tendani. Naadiya, if you could please introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Naadiya Moosajee. I am the co-founder of WomHub and WomEng. I'm an engineer by background. My company and my organization has been working in the engineering and tech industry around diversity and inclusion, and we've been supporting our clients all along the engineering value chain by building talent. So we support them by high school outreach programs. We develop female university students to get them employable and business ready for the engineering and tech industry. We work with women leaders across the engineering industry. And then most recently, we work with female founders and female-led innovators in the engineering and STEM business space. We have a hub in Johannesburg, but we run a lot of online incubators. We've worked in 22 countries around the world with the mandate of building a value chain for engineering talent, but also around diversity and inclusion. We've worked with a number of mining companies in Southern Africa, and really the contribution here is to give some insight and experience on the lessons that we've learned around building talent pipelines for female engineers over the last 14 years.
Wow, interesting. Zenzi, good to see you again. Will you please introduce yourself and give us a little bit of your background, of your very extensive background?
Extensive. Yeah, sure. Good afternoon. Hi Farana and fellow panelists. My name is Zenzi Awases. I am speaking to you from Windhoek, Namibia. I am the founding president of the Women in Mining Association of Namibia. I am a geologist by profession with 15 years experience in exploring and mining diamonds. That's who I am.
Thank you. So let's start with you, Tendani. Why the drive for diversity and inclusivity? What is the value this unlocks?
I think that's a very important question to actually establish why this conversation about women in mining is really important for us to have. So the value that women bring, obviously the first thing we want is that wherever we have a workspace, you want that workspace to be populated by people who represent the population of that area. And what that does is that it introduces diversity of ideas, diversity of thought, diversity of age, diversity of gender, you can name them all. And that improves the bottom line in terms of business growth, productivity, profit, and so forth. So it's just been proven that having a more diverse workforce means that you have people that don't think the same. When that happens, you introduce an opportunity for growth for that business, and positive growth most times. So that's why we are driving so much for inclusion, not just that it's only a one-sided benefit to the women that will be included, but the fact that those women that will be included in the workforce will bring forth value for the different businesses.
Thank you, that's very true. Naseem, is there an improvement in the industry in relation to gender diversity? Have we reached the optimal levels? Do you think that your company has reached the optimal levels, or do you think more can be done?
Thanks, Farana. I think we haven't reached the optimal levels, but I think there's a lot being done at the moment in the industry, which is getting us to a place where we're able to pave a way for future women to actually have the opportunity. And I'll come back to our operation or our company, where the opportunity was given to me. And you know what I like about the opportunity, it was an organic change in the organization. It wasn't a forced change, so we weren't looking at quotas per se. It was something that happened organically, and because it happened organically, it made it so much easier for other females to get confidence that they can join this company here and there's no barriers or any, you know, we talk about gender diversity, so it's about males or females, right? So the opportunity is equal. And again, I'm going to come back a bit to Botswana. Our laws are clear. You know, gender diversity is key. You know, the laws in Botswana are so good for females, to the point that we've had the first female minister in Parliament in 1966 already, right? So we've had the government supporting us, but I think what doesn't do so well is the companies. So you have the laws in place, now the companies need to come on board. And I think with the companies coming on board is we're seeing a lot more companies coming on board. And like Tendani said, diversity brings on an increased bottom line. So when you see that happening and companies actually see that happening in terms of diversity, you're seeing creativity coming on board, innovation. And when that happens, automatically companies want to join into this increased bottom line. And you know, you look at diversity again in our organization, you look at it from a perspective of not trying to get quotas in place, because I believe if you put in quotas and you want to address a number, it's not very sustainable. It may be achieving a goal for a short period of time, but I think in the long term, the sustainability is lost. And that's why I believe in terms of just gender diversity and getting women in the forefront and ensuring that we have diversity per se, I think it has to happen organically. And the structures that you have in place need to create that organic move, right? And again, coming back to the organization that I work for, I'll explain to you, just before my promotion, I was the only female in the boardroom. Come my promotion, complete opposite. When we're basically 75% female, 25% male. In fact, it's just one man, right? So I don't even know if it equates to 25%. It's just one guy and the rest of us are female. But bottom line is, it's given hope to the people that are applying for jobs in our organization, because they know it can happen. And I think because they know it can happen, organically you're seeing this thing happening, and there are more women coming to the forefront because they know that this is an organization that has changed and is able to look at diversity and inclusion in a very different way compared to other organizations.
You mentioned that companies do not always bring in women or include women in gender diversity. What do you think prevents them from doing that?
Oh, it's various things, right? I think, you know, I'm going to bring it closer to home in my situation. I'm in a mining industry, and Zenzi could sort of understand where I'm coming from. We're placed in boxes. So for me, as a CA, I could become a CFO, easily join an ExCo team at CFO. Moving to that next level is always more difficult, right? As somebody coming in from an admin field, I need to be more technical. So I think, you know, just breaking that glass ceiling made it a lot easier where there is opportunity. So there is no fear now for the women that are coming on board, where they know that they can get to a job and they know they've been taken into this job because of what they can deliver on that job. So I think what has happened is there's been a lot more, how do I put it, understanding that women can do anything that they put to, basically. Because, you know, from a perspective of women, we are emotionally intelligent. And I think for me, that is very, very key in terms of us running organizations. And again, we have this very, very high CQ level. You know, we're not afraid of change. That is something, you know, ask somebody to tell you that you can't do something as a woman, and boy, you just jump at that opportunity and do more than they expect, right? So I think for us, in terms of just being women and breaking that glass ceiling is very easy. But I think what was making it difficult for us to get to that next level is the perception of the people that were actually in those senior positions. But I think we've broken those glass ceilings. We show people what we can do as women. And the fact that we can actually do more than a man, we multitask really well. That's part of our inherent DNA. Absolutely every one of us can do that. And I think with that in play as well, it gets us to the next level. And to be honest with you, I think men are able to see now, and unfortunately I'll have to say men, they're able to see what we can deliver. And we don't have any restrictions. I mean, before, you know, we were boxed into mining is for men and not females. You know, going underground, you've designed attire for females. You know, there was always this perception that women couldn't cope with the hardcore stuff. And now we can do anything that we put our mind to.
I totally agree with that. Seriously, what do you think still needs to be done to achieve an inclusive mining industry that treats people of different genders and backgrounds in the same way?
Well, I mean, yes, no. We still have a distance to go before we get optimal representation. And I love what Naseem was just saying now, and I think Tendani touched on it as well. The one thing that we've ignored over all these years, I always say that, you know, our quest for gender equality comes over 70 years now, since the UN Declaration in 1948. And I think over the years, we're realizing that diversity is not enough. Okay, the industry has always had women. We are becoming now, we're defining and saying we're getting more technical women into the industry, which is great. Tendani touched on the benefits of making it more inclusive. In other words, making the representation of women count, because without inclusion, you won't get the benefit, the true benefit of diversity, which is actually equality. But the one thing we've ignored over all this time is the effect of unconscious bias. Unconscious bias is basically, it's a psychological thing, which is mostly encouraged and influenced by deeply entrenched societal and cultural norms. And that's basically to say, you know, everything that Naseem was explaining now about, you know, women were boxed in a specific way, even sitting in the executive structure of a mining company, you are still being boxed. You are still put in those areas. I found, for example, that, so I'm not an executive yet, but I've seen that even in a senior management role, or even what's it called, middle management, and you find yourself to be the only female in these meetings, they'll make statements such as, Zenzi, do you mind taking the minutes because the secretary is not here? Forgetting I'm a qualified geologist. I'm just saying. And then they would even say, would you organize the lunch for us? Just can you take that is unconscious bias, because we're being seen as natural nurturers, even though we've cracked the ceiling, even though the companies, the industry has become more inclusive. So for me, the minute we start looking at unconscious bias as the #1 barrier, not the fact that I am physically not strong enough to go pick up or to drive a cat, I don't know, whatever they're called. That is not the issue here. The fact is that unconscious bias, for me, And I think you'll agree with me, that is the biggest barrier we have here. Look, we're not asking for pink overalls, but we're asking for an overall that suits my physique. Okay, these guys have said, you know, we welcome you to the industry. Let's bring more females to geologists. Yet they have not considered things such as the overall that you're making me wear is actually designed for a man. Unconscious bias. So the question was, what needs to be done? And I note down 3 things of what needs to be done. We need what I've defined as inclusive leadership. These are men or leaders, because they don't have to be just men, because even females have a way of being unconsciously biased towards our colleagues. So these are leaders who have deliberately gone through a process of self-awareness and personal transformation. Somebody who understands that diversity plus inclusion together with unconscious bias will give us the ultimate optimal result we're looking for. So such leaders will then, they are natural advocates for diversity. So with such leadership, you will not need a Women in Mining association to tell you what is the obvious thing to do. The other thing that, because a lot of companies have now realized that diversity is not enough, so they started looking at inclusion, and then I call it the diversity and inclusion kit, because every company has a way now saying everybody must be trained on understanding the importance of diversity and inclusion. But I feel like there needs to be a very strong emphasis on unconscious bias during that training. And most importantly, I think throughout all of that, the golden thread that goes through that is coaching and mentorship. We still need our male colleagues to sponsor or mentor or even coach us. And it should actually be a reciprocal mentorship, because the leadership that Naseem was referring to, I think it was Naseem or Tendani, who was saying, you know, the men have been around, that specific generation will still be around, and you'll be amazed at how much they will learn if you sit with them and say, how about you sit in my shoes for 5 seconds? And then that relationship will fast track the whole thing. So those 3 things for me is, I feel, what needs to be done. But most importantly, if the leadership buys into it, so I think the institution is called Corn, let me just look here, I don't want to get it wrong. Never mind, but I'll get it right. They say that without leadership driving diversity and inclusion, it's not going to happen. So we need the 21st century leadership. I think that's what it's called, 21st century leadership. And that's, for me, is an inclusive leader. Thanks, Farana.
Thank you for that. That's a good idea, and something that we would need to drive the unconscious bias as well. Naadiya, could you speak to some of the success and failures around supporting the mining sector on diversity and inclusion, your own experiences perhaps?
Yeah, sure. And I think, you know, and I couldn't agree more with, you know, we've done a lot of work around conscientizing unconscious bias, right? And sometimes, you know, it's innate in us. Sometimes it's the media, sometimes it's perceptions. And, you know, we've been working with the mining industry, with different mining houses, you know, for the last 14 years. And it's been interesting because, you know, with diversity and inclusion, the mandate, I always say, if you do not have a budget towards diversity and inclusion, it's not going to happen, right? And I think that's one of the biggest lessons I had. Actually, they weren't mining; they were service operated to the mining industry. They were the machine manufacturers, and they called me up and they said, Naadiya, you know, we want to run a women in engineering program, you know, to get more, you know, female engineers into our business and into Africa. It's the best thing for the continent is to get more women engineers into our industry. And I said, no, I couldn't agree more. And I, you know, presented all the stuff that we've been doing at WomEng around building talent pipelines for our organizational partners. And then I said, well, this is how much it's going to cost you to actually support that talent, you know, coming into the sector. And they said, oh, we don't have any budget. And I said, well, how do you expect this is going to work, right? And they were like, oh, no, but you know, don't you just do this? And I was like, look, I do this, but it just doesn't get done without unlocking certain resources. It needs financial resources, human capital resources, and leadership resources. And so, you know, we're working currently with De Beers in Southern Africa. And what I really love about, what's working in our particular partnership is that there's funding that has been earmarked for 3 years. So it's not a singular year-on-year conversation. It's a 3-year term with KPIs that are measurable and achievable within the sector, right? And so we're working in mining communities to think about what mines of the future are going to look like, as well as spillover industries and how we can support that on a local level. And then thinking about how is it that we support entrepreneurship and employability within those spaces, for specifically looking at the gender dynamics. Right? And I think that's really important for organizations to have a longer term vision around diversity and inclusion. These things don't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen without budget, right? When we've been working around building engineering talent pipelines, and if you think about it, where we start, the scary stories here is that girls as young as 5 years old are socialized to know that maths and science is not for them. And that's a scary reality, and that's research that's being done by leanin.org out of the US, specifically around kind of the tech industry, but it applies to all our industries. And so, for us, we actually work with girls that as young as, as that age, and then we work it with 12-year-olds, 18-year-olds. So if you're thinking about, building a talent pipeline, you need a good 10 years to be able to actually get this right? I mean, to make sure that you've got strong talent being built within your countries and within the organizations. And it's not impossible, and I'll tell you why. We started a program called Girl Eng, and we started it in 2009. And it was a high school level program. It was creating awareness around engineering careers. And then we have a flagship program called the Women Fellows Program, which is an employability program for university students. And usually it's a platform, we do a lot of training with them, and then we bring in our partners, like our mining partners and our other engineering partners, who recruit from that pool of high quality female engineering talent who's gone through our training. And we were sitting in one of the evenings at the training program, and this, about to graduate engineering student, turns to me and she says, Nadia, I just want to say that I'm an engineer because of you. And I said, well, what do you mean? And she said, I was on the Girl Eng program. I said, whoa, hold the phone. And I grabbed the mic and I said, I'm sorry, program coordinator, I just have to ask how many Girl Engers are in the room, right? And of the 60 girls, there were 6 that had come specifically through our program. Wow. And we weren't even monitoring, we weren't tracking, right? We just had this crazy idea that if we actually did proper outreach to a broader community, we'd be able to actually inspire girls to do engineering. And we're starting to see that effects in the engineering student numbers across the universities and the universities of technology that we work with in a number of African countries, right? So, our engineering partners really need to think about, a long-term outlook on what is it that they want to be building, both now in the short term as well as the long term. What does that vision look like for diversity and inclusion within the workplace? And how do you build the next generation of leaders, understanding, that, the sector is changing with, the increase of technology and innovation.
Wow, it's so good to hear that young girls are being exposed and knowing that the opportunity is there if they choose for it. That's amazing, and I'm so glad to hear that. I think more exposure needs to happen, and this word needs to get around a whole lot more, that they have the choice, and it exists. That it's truly amazing and needs to be shared.
No, and the other thing is we need positive role models, right? And I mean, it's weird. I'm in this sector. I've worked with the mining industry, but I've met all of you amazing women in this industry for the first time on the score, right? And we're all in the same region. In fact, we live down the road from each other, so to speak. And I think there's a piece here around being able to kind of raise the profile of women in the sector as role models for the next generation to come, and also to form communities within our organizations as well and in our sectors, and then cross-pollinate that across sectors, right? Because I think while we focus here on the mining industry, right, the mining requires a lot of engineering, and so sometimes we siloed in our descriptors, and it actually compartmentalizes people, where there's really a key opportunity for us as women within this entire ecosystem to be able to get together and amplify our impact.
I couldn't agree more. And please know I am in full support of anything you think I could assist or mentor, support anybody on the way forward and to see them grow. So you're welcome to call on me anytime.
I will always I will always take up somebody who's committed, making a commitment like that. I'm always going to follow up.
You go for it. And I've made a public commitment. So you're really more than welcome to do that. Tendani, how do we overcome current challenges with attracting and retaining women to the industry?
Yeah. So before I answer that question, I just wanted to echo what both Naseem and Zenzi said, something that resonates with myself as a woman in mining South Africa committee member. So Zenzi mentioned that we actually don't need, if we're doing the right thing, we actually would not need movement to drive this women in mining agenda. And Naseem mentioned that at their organization, they actually don't chase a quota because that's not sustainable. At Women in Mining South Africa, we actually wake up every day and dread the fact that we still exist, because amongst ourselves, we are successful when we actually don't. We are successful when the organization is not necessary. So every day you have to wake up and do something means you're still on a journey to achieve something, and it feels like it's taking long because now you're still putting in the work. So I just wanted to say, they mentioned two very important things, that we're not chasing numbers. We're chasing something that should be sustainable, something that the world should be driving towards. We shouldn't have to push it, but because it's not getting done, we currently have to. But anyways, I just wanted to touch on that because it's very close to my heart. And regarding what you asked, so the other day I was doing some reading, right? And someone asked me, Tendani, do we have barriers getting women in mining, or do we have challenges? I opted for challenges because when I read up on barriers that women in mining had in the past, I actually came across things like it was considered bad luck at one point for a woman to set foot on the mine. So literally just coming on was an issue. You had to sit at home, and that's a hard barrier to say you're actually not going to be allowed on the operation because according to what we believe, you're going to bring this operation bad luck. Luckily, we don't have any of those hard barriers currently. What we do have are challenges. And Zenzi touched on some of them. She touched on unconscious bias, which is actually a huge thing because it leads to a lot of things. It leads to assumptions of women not being flexible. It leads to assumptions of women being too emotional. It leads to assumptions that give people reason to say, no, I can't put her in this position because she can't handle that pressure. So when Naadiya was responding, she mentioned a few things like mentorship that we could actually use to get over those unconscious biases that we've got. So in my opinion, I'm very strong on representation. I'm very strong on looking up and seeing someone that looks like me. So in terms of overcoming challenges, I think the more we have women sitting in positions of power, the more we are able to influence the direction of organizations within the mining industry. So for me, the first thing is definitely representation. The second thing has already been discussed. It's definitely mentorship. And I think the third thing is just knowledge. So a lot of, we are now acclimatized to the opportunities that exist within the industry. But if you came to me as a high school student, I would just tell you that the industry has a mining engineer. So I think what we can do more, and what we do from the Women in Mining South Africa side, is we are very involved in terms of just getting information out there, getting high school students, getting graduates to just understand the opportunities that exist within the industry, understand the challenges that we'll encounter so that they don't give up when they get into the industry. And so that's very big with us. We hold career days, we hold networking days, we hold mentorship programs, mentorship workshops, just anything we can do to ensure that we not only attract the women into the industry by making it friendly for them to come in, but we also let them know that it is now friendly and open for them to come and explore their interests, if I can say that.
Look, I must definitely agree. On the point of knowledge, I think knowledge is power, and I think it's very essential to encourage women to continue building their toolkit of knowledge, because they would definitely add value by what they bring to the table, and that will keep them at the table.
Yeah.
So definitely that, and everything else you've mentioned. Naseem, how are companies ensuring diversity and inclusivity? I know you said that in your company it's definitely not a tick box exercise. Or is it an organic process? Is it a deliberate strategy? Or is it just a matter of employing the right person for the job? How generally, not just in your company, but what do you see as the trend?
But so I won't talk the company that I'm working for anymore. I'll talk generally here, and I'm going to talk specific Botswana here, because I can't talk to the areas that the other ladies are in. But I think what is happening now is, in the financial, and I'm going to start off with the financial services industry. A lot more women have been seen in that industry, and a lot of upcoming great leaders are coming out there, and mainly women. And I think in that circumstance there, you could see that the platform was set, and there's a lot more ability for people to see progression in those areas. So especially for women, right? So I think that the structures were set up really well in those sectors. And also, we'll come back to the physical work that Zenzi and team were talking about. So in terms of financial services, became very easy specifically because women were actually being promoted in senior positions, exco teams, and to leadership positions like CEOs, right? So you could see that going into that field, it was easy to actually get to your aspiration being a CEO or just being on an exco team, wherever you set within your timelines and your aspiration as an individual. Now, in the mining industry right now, that is happening because a lot of the senior leaders in the exco teams, and you're seeing the combination of exco here being now a lot more women than men in the exco teams, which if you asked me about this 10 years ago, that was not the dynamic. So there's a definite concerted effort to change the perception of mining and women in mining per se. So you are seeing that, and what this is happening, and I'll come back to organic. What is happening right now is because people can see that their dreams can actually occur and it can happen, they are actually now aspiring to get into mining sectors and aspiring to ensure that they get to the areas that they want to be, whether it be in exco or it be in CEO levels, right? Because they're seeing these doors opening, whereas before you'd get frustrated and leave. And now there could potentially be a frustration. In any job, there could be a frustration, but there is possibility and people are seeing that. So I think the structures that are being put in place in the companies, I mean, you heard me mention that the legislation here is very, very diverse. I mean, we've never had issues on females being put in a box from a legislation perspective. And I think that applies to all the countries. But it's about the organizations and the structures that they put in place. And I think that is something that specifically in the mining industry, it's been settled a long time ago in the financial industries. But in the mining industries here in Botswana, you can see that upcoming. And the fact that there are more women in senior positions actually helps the cause, because there are more females actually coming for interviews now because they know they can get those jobs. Whereas before, it was a bit of a challenge, yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. Diversity does drive diversity. I've seen that over and over again. Sorry, Zenzi, I didn't realize that you had wanted to add something to Tendani's comment on the current challenges attracting and retaining women in the industry. Please do go ahead.
Okay. I'm unmuted. Yeah, no, I actually, another thing that I wanted to add to what Tendani said, besides representation and all that, again, coming back to inclusive leadership, is that is the competitive advantage that an inclusive leadership has is that it actually acts as a magnet, attracting top talent, because a lot of the young ladies, as much as they see us standing up there, or they see a lot of female leaders emerging, they still are wondering, but how come a company, as much as they have so many female leaders in there, you don't find a female CEO, for example. But the minute you start seeing that there's a company that's driving visibly inclusion, that in itself is a very big a magnet, and that will assist in retaining and attracting female talent to the industry. That's all I wanted to add.
Thank you. And what do you think we need to do to get that right? To get companies to attract, to ensure that they actually put females in those positions? Where do you think the gap is, or why do you think that's not happening fast enough?
I think we've covered that but quite extensively, Farana. I mean, it's just a matter of we are failing to attract and retain. But I think the biggest thing here is that a lot of females get discouraged as they go up the pipeline. I don't know if I've touched on the leaky pipeline phenomena, but because you when you can't crack that glass ceiling, you become so frustrated. But what I'm finding happening now is that you actually find male sponsors who sit on exco level are becoming more and more important now. You need somebody who can say, but Zenzi actually is a good candidate for this position, in an event where they are saying, no, a female is not ready. So you're finding some of them actually say, don't tell them I'm your sponsor. And you don't have to, as long as you know you've got somebody up there who is fighting your battle for you. And sponsor is a little bit different from mentorship, obviously, but you're finding actually a lot more males are becoming receptive to the idea of inclusion, that they actually are our secret agents in boardrooms and stuff like that. So which is really, really fantastic to see. I'm seeing a lot happening here in Namibia, and I'm sure in South Africa and anywhere else that's happening as well. Naseem, maybe you can add on to that on the boards or the levels that you're sitting. Do you find to see sponsors happening? Now I'm taking over the interview, but
Go for it.
Thank you for the platform. So that's true, Zenzi. I think it's all encompassing, right? I mean, mentorship is quite key. Sponsorship is very key as well. And I'll sort of bring it personally to my level. If I didn't have, and you know what, believe it or not, my mentors were all male. Yeah. It's quite amazing, but I had male mentors, and they were always the ones that told me, you know what, Naseem, don't believe somebody can tell you, don't believe what those individuals are saying, because you can do this. And because it's a man telling you that you can do it, you actually believe in that. Another woman will tell you, you can do it, but you're like, no, you haven't experienced, you're experiencing the same thing I am. So what's different in my experience to yours, right? But when you get a male saying it, for some odd reason, it resonates a lot more. And this is where we're not very gender diverse, but but it's because they prompt you and they help you to try and break those glass ceilings. And again, sponsorship is quite key. Had I not been, and fortunately for me in this case here, I was promoted by a female, right? And she saw the potential in me that others didn't see. And it's because of her I'm in this position, right? So you need people to advocate for you. And that's very key. And I've seen that always working. I mean, it takes somebody else to see that potential in you to get to the next level. And that's always the case, right? Whether you're in an interview or in an organization where you're just stepping up to the next position, it takes somebody in that panel to understand who you are as an individual and to understand your potential. And generally the sponsors are quite key, and so are your mentors.
Yeah, but also remember that there's nothing wrong with most, if not all my mentors were also male. But remember, this whole time you had a densely populated industry. They were, so if they're the ones who recognize your talent, that's fantastic. But now roles have reversed. Okay, now the younger ladies who look up to us, we are responsible for being their sponsors. To add to, and with that, now you're bringing in the diversity and inclusion part in sponsorship and mentorship as well.
Sorry, could I add something to that? Sorry, Farana.
Go ahead.
You know, the other thing that I think is quite key, and this is not talking to the work environment anymore. I think it's even just generally kids that are in university and just kids that are at school. You know, it's the way we're creating that pathway for them, where we're telling the females that you can work in any industry. You're telling a male he can work in any industry. He can be a nurse if he wants to. He can be anything he wants to be. Where before we had these boxes that we put in place, and now those don't exist. I mean, I'll bring it closer to home, which I always do. I have a young son and a young daughter, and they understand that they're able to do anything. And I mean, my daughter is just something else. There are no barriers for her. And I think with us as individuals, when we started working, we sort of even created our own barriers or challenges, as Tendani says. We created our own challenges. And I think that was our biggest enemy, in my opinion. I mean, I got offered a job of becoming the first MD in a diamond mining industry in Botswana. And I questioned my ability, right? And I wanted it for so long, but I questioned my ability. So sometimes it's also the individuals as well that are adding to these complexities. But I think what we're doing to the youngsters is we're actually paving those pathways to say to them that you can do whatever you want to. And if you put your mind to it and you work hard at it and you don't give up on your dream, you definitely will get it. So I think those, I mean, aside from corporate structures and that sort of thing, this is coming out inherently in the education system and even the way the kids are being brought up these days. So I think that is also going to add to the dynamics that we're facing right now. And hopefully we'll have a very diverse universe in the next 5 to 10 years.
Look, we must also remember children learn not from what we tell them, but from what we show them.
Yeah, no, true.
And breaking these glass ceilings and showing them that anything is possible by being in the industry that we are and by making the difference that we do is teaching our children and the future generations that it can be done. It doesn't help telling them this, but not doing it ourselves, because then they're not going to believe it can happen. So I do believe that you're a great role model for them to see the way forward, and not just your own children, but their friends and all the future generations that are in any way crossing your path. So I think we have we are in a fortunate position of being able to set and change the future. It's not stereotyped as women can only do this and men can only do that, like the past generations. And we've been put at the forefront of change. And that we are taking it with both hands is great. And we have the choice to change the way the world can be for future generations. And so I think we've got this great opportunity to change the world. And the only way to do that is by example. So keep going. You're doing a great job, all of you, actually. Naadiya, let's get back to the panel discussion. Working around the world to support diversity and inclusion in the engineering and tech industry. What lessons have you learned, best practices are there that you can share in the sector?
Sure. So, I mean, it's such a fantastic kind of, I think, a job, a calling to be able to do what I do. But I want to implore the panel as I kind of go back to just kind of the language that we use on ourselves. And I think this is a lesson that I've learned across the board with women in leadership everywhere. Naseem, you spoke about how you've been given this opportunity to be the CEO. No, you earned that opportunity, right? And so just the language that we use about ourselves, the socializing that we get from a really young age around not being boastful, don't share your credentials. I was at a a conference where, you know, Dr. Precious Moloi-Motsepe was speaking, and everybody called her Umama because, you know, in our African culture, it's a sign of respect, right? But actually, she's a doctor, right? And we never, and when we see senior women who have PhDs or professorships, we always refer to them as kind of the maternal instinct and by their maternal names rather than by their professional titles. But I've never heard anybody call somebody Upapa, right? You know, by the paternalistic name, right, in our cultures. And so it's really about honoring the intellectual ability of women in the sector and not, you know, not negating the fact that they're amazing women, that they are mothers to nations, right, as forerunners in the work that we're doing and forebearers in our journey within engineering. But we also need to recognize that we now play in a global world where our skills are transversable. And you know, you're not doing anybody, you're doing yourself a disservice by not being able to kind of own that you're awesome, which I think is what we really as women need to do, and especially in the diversity and inclusion space. And then the other thing I think that I've learned, you know, through this space is really about negotiation. The other evening, I was on we were running a session around diversity and inclusion in the financial services in actuarial science. And very similarly to engineering, you know, the number of women in actuarial science was actually very limited. And you know, Naseem, kind of in that financial industry, even though there's a lot of women, you know, in certain sectors, there's a women are minority. And then when you get into senior leaders, there's actually across all industries, you know, women make up a very small percentage. In fact, I saw in Australia, there are more CEOs named Andrew than there are women, right? And very similarly in the US, that, you know, there's a very common name in America, and there's more CEOs with that name than there are female CEOs, right? And you know, they had a senior female actuary, and she said, you know, she's an actuary. She is supporting her team, helping them to write the exams. She is a mother. She's just got, you know, she's got 3 kids, and she's got a 22-month-old kid, and she's now, you know, working from home under this COVID situation, and she's cooking again because she now doesn't have the 2-hour commute that she has anymore. And she said, but her husband is the MD. Oh, and she also sat on a corporate board and a nonprofit board. She did all of these things, but her husband was just he was the MD, right? And his job was so important. And I just kind of sat there in shock for a while. And I said, you know, we don't negotiate for ourselves. We take on all these roles as women, right? And because we've got to, you know, have everybody's approval, we've got the superwoman complex, right? And honestly, it's exhausting to have it all. And I know this, I'm a woman, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a mother, I'm, you know, and so kind of the lesson around diversity and inclusion is, you know, everybody's going to let you into that party, right? You know, and that's what diversity means. And inclusion is being asked to dance, right? But, you know, especially in kind of COVID time where women are working from home more, we're being asked to dance, but we've also been asked to cook and teach the kids on Zoom because the teachers are now, you know, they can't go to school, and cook and this. And then, you know, and then we're exhausted and we break down and we decide we want to go, you know, and give it up and go and live in Bali, because you know, I've had that idea way too many times to just go, you know, resign and go on a beach in Bali. My business partner and I've had this conversation way too many times. Normal.
You're putting it out there.
I'm putting it out into the universe that, you know, I'd like to just kind of sit on a beach in Bali. It's warmer there than it is currently in Cape Town. And it's about, you know, so we in the space of diversity and inclusion, it's around, you know, providing holistic support for women. It's about negotiating for yourselves. And it's also about, you know, it's about time that men pick up the slack, right? I mean, I said that, you know, I spent my life empowering women, and then God has a real funny sense of humor because he gives feminist boys, and I've got a 3-year-old, right? But you know, for me, it's so important to make sure that he understands that mommy and daddy have an equal role in his education, in his upbringing. And in fact, I always laugh because my husband is the chef. I can't cook very well, so there's always this assumption that, oh, Naadiya, she's, you know, she's Muslim, she can cook really well. It's all that unconscious bias. Everybody thinks that I can make a really good meal. I can't. My husband is the chef, right? And it's, you know, making sure that workload is equally split in a family, because we can have it all, right? But it means that we as a community need to together and be inclusive in everything that we do, right? And then to really reframe the narrative as women around what we bring to the table. and negotiate better.
Excellent. And good learning lessons for that 3-year-old. he's going to have himself a lucky wife one day. Sorry?
I said I'm raising him as a feminist, so he's going to be a great husband.
That's great. Tendani, how does the global move to 4IR impact the journey to inclusivity and gender diversity?
Thanks, Farana. So at work, I am in innovation and improvement. So I do touch on a little bit of 4IR here and there. And I think it's quite evident that the move, the global move towards digitization and 4IR is actually an accelerator for inclusion and diversity, because it introduces like a new set of skills that are required. There's a new type of employee that's required for the 4IR world. So you find people talking about upskilling and reskilling and so forth. So it takes away from the traditional belief that the mining industry is meant for a certain type of person in terms of physical strength and so forth. So I think that the move to digitization, automation, just 4IR in general, is an accelerant to diversity and inclusion. And you can just see that with the COVID pandemic, we were kind of forced to make remote working work, where before you wanted people to actually be on site to make a difference. But I think now it's been proven that you're able to do work remotely. For some jobs, yes, some jobs you still need to be at the actual operation, but it's forced us to kind of rethink how we work. And the remote working, for example, gives women the opportunity to kind of say, hey, you know, where you used to judge me for saying I need to go home to do whatever, fetch the kids or whatever, that flexibility is no longer a threat in terms when someone looks at your competence or your performance, because we are now able to prove you can actually be quite flexible in how you work, and your deliverables, I think, are even more, were even more during the COVID pandemic than they were before when you were going into work. You no longer have traffic time. You're actually quite effective in a space that you're comfortable in. So yeah, just with that COVID example, I think that definitely COVID, I mean, 4IR does come with a few challenges, of course. There's no change that doesn't have challenges, and that's why you have to manage it well. But overall, I think in terms of inclusivity and diversity, it actually, it's a positive change in that regard.
No, definitely a positive change. Looks like we're almost at the end of our discussion, but Naseem, I'd just like to ask you, what do you think are the misconceptions about women in mining or women in business in general that still need to be tackled?
Thank you for that, Farana. I think, look, the misconception is coming back to what Tendani says. You know, we've got to pick up kids from school and all these things, and there's always this added baggage for women in the industry, and it doesn't matter whether you're in mining or the financial sector or any sector. There's always this added baggage. But you know what? The men are definitely coming to the forefront, and they are assisting us. So I think that misconception it was there. It's slowly going away, and women are generally outsourcing their activities these days. So whether it be to their husbands or another entity, but they're outsourcing, and it's becoming a lot more efficient. And I think, you know what, we are having the difficult conversations that I can't cope with this level. I can only cope with this here, and that's why we're able to basically not take on the world's weight on our shoulders. We're letting go of that weight, and we're trying to focus on what is important, and not to say that our kids are not important, but we're able to now balance equally and not get into a situation where we're doing everything. It's a slow transition, but we're definitely doing it. And I think that from a misconception perspective is definitely going away. And again, the other misconception that you generally have with women is, and I'll come back to the boxes, where we keep putting, it's either ourselves or the people that we're working with put us in boxes that also is slowly going away. And I think it's, you know, and I'm going to give everybody on this panel the benefit. I think it's all of us that are actually creating these breakages in these boxes, because it's because of us that these boxes are actually breaking. I mean, I can't talk about this 10 years ago. I was still in a box. I'm no longer in that box. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Zenzi, a final comment from you on advice for any young girl wanting to enter the industry?
Unmute. Give me a second, please, Farana. I actually wrote this down because I wanted to, yes, here we go. It's important for any girl or any female, anybody really who wants to enter the industry, that you research the industry that you want to pursue. The mining industry will 10 out of 10 times, 9 out of 10 maybe, land you up in a very, very remote part of the world. And I think that's one of the things that shock young people when they enter the industry. That's number one. Planning is key. I cannot stop saying how important planning is, and I'll be brave enough to say that includes family planning. You can ask me about that later. I want to encourage you to have an outstanding work ethic. Your work ethic should be almost supernatural. Nobody should be able to find fault with what you're doing with your work. And at the end of the day, when the going gets tough, it will be your outstanding work that will save you. Now, fourthly, I want to say be authentic. Never, never compromise on who you are, and please do not try and grow a thick skin. Thick skins do not look cute on us. They don't. It was actually a very wise woman, doctor. I will be so difficult. I will do her name such injustice, but it is the first female minister that Naseem was referring to, Dr. Chiepe, who once told me that you should never, never cower when they expect you to. Believe me, there will be times when things will really, really get tough, and that saying about females working 10 times harder is true. Hopefully by the time you enter the industry, it will not be that, but never, never, never cower when they expect you to do, and stand your guard. And finally, and most importantly, get yourself a mentor. You cannot run this race in this industry without a mentor. He doesn't have to be an official mentor, but get somebody in the industry whom you talk to. I love what Naadiya is doing with WomEng and Girl Eng and the is it Eng Hub, Woman Hub. But I love that, because I've actually been reading up on that. That encourages you to, it's even a very safe space to just to take off what's on your mind and ask questions. Guys, there's nothing wrong with asking questions. Please use any, but yeah, most importantly, get a mentor. And I think finally, thank you very much for the opportunity for having me on this panel, and really want to commend African Mining Summit for bringing up this panel this time around. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zenzi. Is there anyone else that would like to add a comment before we conclude?
Farana, just as a closing, and I think we're seeing the shifts continuously in the engineering and tech industry and driving innovation and for 4IR. Whatever industry you get into, there's it's the technical skills can be learned, but I think the two important qualities that you require, and we all are going to require going forward, is one is adaptability, and then the other one is there's a futurist who famously said the illiterate of the 21st century is not going to be the one who cannot read or write, it's going to be the one who can't unlearn and relearn and then relearn again, right? And so this idea of kind of life as we move into kind of 4IR is this ability to have lifelong learning and not be in those boxes, because these young millennials coming out, the World Economic Forum says that you'll change careers, not jobs, careers 5 times in your life. I'm on my 7th career, right? So I'm clearly an anomaly. Naseem is probably also had a number of kind of career shifts, from finance into mining, And that's okay. And we need, because that's also part of the diversity and inclusion story, right? And so it's about how is it that we see these shifts, these skill shifts, and make the best out of the opportunity.
Absolutely. And with each change, you actually bring more to the table because you know so much more and it adds value at the end of the day. So thank you for that. Naseem, would you like to add a comment?
Yeah, I just sort of want to touch back on what Zenzi is saying is that, I mean, we are definitely creating a platform which is better than the platforms that we've seen in our past, right? But coming with all that, there's a lot of responsibility in any job that you take. So the hard work doesn't go away. So you've got to work hard. It's just not going to be given to you in a silver platter. That's a given. You've got to work really hard in whichever industry that you're in and give them superpower, sort of, in Zenzi's word, superpower, or amazing results, right? So that nobody can fault you for the work that you're doing. And then again, it's coming back to change management, and Nadia mentions it very well and very articulately. I'm not gonna say what she said, but all we're seeing right now is for people that are coming into any industry is they need to have that ability to change and change very quickly. We're seeing it, and you know, the only constant these days is change. I mean, we've seen it this year. I mean, this year has just been an amazing year of changes. But
it was March and it's now September.
Yeah, exactly, right? So, you know, you'll see change, and it's the ability of individuals, and this is not specifically for females, it's everyone. It's our ability to be able to change and change well, and to run leadership roles in these dynamic situations, right? And that's what makes you different from somebody else. And it's that hard work that you put in. So yes, we're doing all the great work, but that doesn't guarantee you that position. You've got to work really hard at it, and you've got to be dedicated to the job. That's bottom line all. Thank you.
And at the end of the day, what you put into the world is what you get out of the world. So,
Yep.
Of course, yeah.
Tendani, last words from you?
Yeah, so I echo everything that has been said by my co-panelists. I couldn't agree more. I am big on self-development and self-worth. So the one thing I would say is just believe in yourself. You know, you need that drive from within to be able to conquer anything that externally comes to you. I'm a big believer of internal locus of control. So I would just say, definitely believe in yourself, be resilient, just never giving up, because it won't be easy. Even if the mining industry was 100% women, it wouldn't be easy to get to the top, because there'd be competition there. So just believe in yourself, be resilient, and Naseem and Zenzi have said, work extremely hard, never give anyone a reason to come and call you lazy, and it's actually true. That should never happen. So yeah, that would be the last thing from me. And the one thing I did want to say, because there's a lot of thinking, there's a myth that women in mining is anti-men. So I just want to say, for us, pro-women is not anti-men. I think we can both coexist and build together. Thank you. And thank you for having me on the panel.
Thank you, Tendani. It's all about creating a fair playing field for both men and women. We're not just about it being only women. I agree totally with that. Yeah, and in conclusion, I'd like to say thank you very much to all of you for the time that you've put aside. It's been very interesting and exciting getting to know you. I look forward to future collaborations with you. Be sure you will hear from all of me, or all of you will hear from me very soon. Take care, stay safe, and keep in touch. Thank you. And this brings us to the end of our Africa Mining Summit Women in Mining panel discussion. Take care.